Ready, everybody? Welcome to episode 57 of Boroughs and Burbs. This is episode 57, the Big Boston Show. And I am very pleased to welcome back after a long summer, too long, my partner, Roberto Cabrera in New York City, and our special guest, Lisa Reynes, who runs the entire greater Boston area, runs that office and all the satellite offices. And her star agents, Craig Brody, who's coming to us today from Boston. Carl Linval, my Nantucket expert, is coming to us from New Orleans today. And is Jesse with us? I don't think Jesse is with us. And Allison Parry is with us from Martha's Vineyard. So welcome, everybody, and it's so glad to have you. I think I'm not going to get Carl for the entire hour, so I'm going to go out of order and start with him.
Great.
And ask you, tell me about Nantucket. Is it as awesome and beautiful and as desirable and is the market as hot as we think it is in New York and Connecticut?
So the answer is yes. It is definitely a magical place. As someone that grew up there, moved away for a bit and came back as an adult, I have to say it is by far my favorite place on earth. So I love being there. The market is definitely still hot. We are starting to see more price reductions than we have last year, which is new. Say last July, we saw about 6 price reductions. This past July, we saw 46 price reductions during the same time period. Our inventory is slowly starting to climb. We were around 67 listings at the beginning of the summer. We're now at around 155 listings. A normal inventory is probably between 300 and 400.
The average sale, 3.5 million?
Yeah, it's right around there. I think it's just a little lower than that, but yes, our average sale I think is around 3.3, 3.4. And anything that is brand new and well priced or reasonably priced, I'll say, whatever that word means, is having multiple bids. So still a very active market. There's not anything currently underneath $1 million unless you're part of our covenant program, which is kind of a low income offering to residents.
That's not true. I found one listing for $980,000 for a 1-bedroom house. It didn't look like it had been painted in 100 years, but I found it.
I sold it.
You did?
Yeah, I did. So it's gone.
Carl, when you say the inventory is normally at like say 300, is that pre-COVID? And do you expect that it'll ever come back to that, or is this like a new normal?
Sure. So I think it was pre-COVID. I'll give you a little background. During our downturn, last economic downturn, we felt bottom at around December of 2010. At that time, we had 750 properties on the market, which was a huge glut to work through. So now that we are, we've seen a few cycles, I find that kind of magic numbers right around 350. And if you're above that, it starts to turn into more of a buyer's market. If you're below that, it's a seller's market. That seems to be a pretty good threshold point for us.
So why do you think prices are slightly sliding? Or softening?
Softening. I think it's really, brokers started getting a little maybe over ambitious and sellers got a little over ambitious with their pricing. When you can only have 20 and 30% year over year for so long. So I think what we're seeing now is that some sellers some buyers, are starting to be wary of economic impacts coming forward. And they're starting to push back a little bit on the pricing.
Wait a minute. When I think of Nantucket, I think of a super rich market. And I want to understand, are they really so sensitive about interest rates? Are they really so sensitive about commodity prices and the price of $1 of gas? I mean, I'm wondering whether, while the rest of us might be kind of locked into our low interest rate mortgage and reluctant to put our house on the market and sell and maybe making decisions on interest rates, I think your market behaves differently. Tell me if I'm wrong.
No, I agree. We are definitely more insulated than a lot of other markets. One, on just having such a small supply of properties, and two, you're right. We have such an abundance of wealth on the island that rates don't affect people like they do other places. So I'm not talking about rates, but people will look at the stock market and they'll say, hey, I could be looking at a 20% hit this year. And maybe they looked at it speculative that the island prices will also fall and they can buy into Nantucket cheaper. So sometimes it's more of I can wait this out and maybe save myself a few $1 million.
If I want a 4-bedroom house in Nantucket, if I come to you, say, listen, I need 4 bedrooms, I want to find a place. Yep. I need to spend between what and what, more or less?
You're probably looking between, it's 2.5 is probably you're going to be your bottom, if I'm being honest, and then it's sky's the limit. But I would say you're probably between 2.5 and 5. Where the island has it's really interesting because people try to do price per square foot in a lot of areas, New York included. That algorithm really doesn't work on Nantucket, because you could have a 1,000 square foot beach shack that's worth $12 million, or you could have a 5,000 square foot beautiful home not close to the beach that's worth 5.
On what type of what approximate land acreage would that be on? And I'm sure it varies, but
sure.
An acre.
A beachfront property, you're looking at anywhere between half an acre, probably up to like 2 or 3 acres. Really not big parcels. If you're in town, minimum lot size is 5,000 square feet. So you're looking at a really tiny parcel, but you're paying to be close to town, close to the activity, and it's also a really easy area to rent. So a lot of people will kind of buy in those areas like Town and Brant Point and Cliff, because of their the easiness to rent them.
I noticed that one of your most expensive on the island, $28 million, is for the Coffin House, a brick house downtown. What makes that so expensive?
Are you talking about Jared Coffin House, or I'm just
19 Pleasant Street? And I'm going to share my screen and show people.
Go for it.
Just what $28 million gets you in Nantucket right now.
So this property, I actually worked on it as a kid. My father was a builder out here, and we did some renovating to this home. It's
full circle moment, huh?
Yeah, exactly. To see it come back. So this property is unique because you really don't have lots this size on Nantucket in town. If this was to be a traditional property, it could be carved up into 6 or 7 lots. So part of the value is the fact that you have this amount of space spread out, your privacy. You have a huge brick wall that surrounds the entire front of the property. You have a beautiful garden space, and it's really a piece of history. So, if you go up into the cupola of the house, there's actually signatures of every builder that's ever worked on the house, and that goes back way into the early 1800s.
That is so cool.
Very cool. All right. So, Roberto, what's your reaction to Nantucket versus the Hamptons? Because you are a Hamptons expert. You have a house in the Hamptons. And New Yorkers think of the Hamptons the way Boston and frankly, Connecticut thinks of Nantucket.
I think it's just so much more vast. It's so much more vast. There's so many, and there's also a lot, there's Southampton, there's Amagansett, there's, Sag Harbor, there's Watermill. There's just so much more. It seems there that, it's isolated. So, it's like Manhattan in a sense, there's only so much.
Is it a similar scene? I mean, do people go to the parties, see and be seen and hang out with fancy people, or is Nantucket just a little bit more understated? Mm-hmm. Yes?
I think Nantucket's a little bit more understated. We joke that celebrities go to the Vineyard, but Fortune 500 celebrities come to Nantucket. And we really feel that, part of growing up there, you could be sitting next to billionaires at a table and have no idea. And everybody goes there because no one interacts, or not interacts, but no one they don't really care who you are unless you're a nice person. So that's the community that we build on the island. And it's really, and to comment on the Hamptons about its vastness, and its kind of market to Nantucket, every time I see prices in the Hamptons starting to taper or fall, I have that as a kind of an economic indicator for me that in about 2 years, I'm going to start to feel that.
It's that much of a lag.
Yeah.
All right, Allison, I don't see your camera. We'll come back to Martha's Vineyard in a minute. I have Craig, and Craig is supposed to be downtown in Boston, but it doesn't look like Boston. So prove to us, Craig, that you're really in Boston. And where are you?
So, hi, everybody. I'm actually in the Seaport area, which if you went back about 10 years ago, this area was parking lots. It was owned by a gentleman named Frank McCourt, who used to own the LA Dodgers. McCourt Construction went through a messy divorce, and his wife ended up, divvying up some of these parcels. It was purchased by 3 or 4 major developers, and now it's the most expensive area in Boston to live, where we've hit over $5,000 a square foot. This project right in front of me over here is the Echelon in Boston. This was a $1 billion project here, of 3 buildings with retail on the bottom, and obviously a pool in the middle. You guys can see this, right?
Yes.
Right.
Yes.
Behind us is the Boston Harbor, and you can't see this building, but St. Regis is opening up its first residences here in Boston. No hotel component. That opens up, I think in the next 30 to 60 days. So a lot happening. This is Amazon Building 1, and Amazon Building 2 is going up. And Millennium Partners is just about to open up that tall building in the back. It's the largest passive building in the world, and they're opening up their second residential office component. And then over here, you guys can see what Boston has really been going crazy with is life sciences. It's the #1 life science probably space to be in the entire world. Our companies like Moderna has made enough billionaires. They're based in Cambridge, and right over here is actually a company called Vertex, which has a larger, they actually have more money than Moderna. They've come up with 2 different drugs with cystic fibrosis. So Boston is exploding. We're keeping talent here. We lost a lot of talent to the Bay Area over the years. But if you think about it, like we have Wayfair's headquarters here, DraftKings, our proximity to the to Europe is fabulous. We have probably one of the best healthcare systems in the world, and education on top of that. So people want to be here, and we're booming all over Boston. Another fun fact, right here in Boston, we're the sneaker capital of, I think, the world, between New Balance, Puma, Reebok, Converse, all headquartered here in Boston. So Boston's booming. It's a small geographical area, so we don't have that much space, as New York. And, we only go out 15 miles, but I have to tell you, like, it's not the city that, you were visiting maybe 15 years ago. It's now become, an international city where, restaurateurs for major food hospitality, which is Carbone's in New York, just opened up their first outpost here, Contessa. So Boston's just booming right now. And, the real estate market's great. I do business here, and I do business out in the Burbs, and the Burbs are doing well. We have an inventory problem, probably like the rest of the country. We're not getting as many, people into the listings like everybody else, but I would say, like, that upper echelon business, that $2 million, $2.5 million price and up, certainly slow down a little bit. But, if you go out to the Burbs, I think you're in that $1 to $2 million range, there's still competition, and you still have to pay ask or slightly above ask. But I think a little bit over.
Roberto and I, New Yorkers, are thinking, why are your buildings so short?
Well, yes, we have height restrictions here. We don't go like you guys and continue up, but it's changed quite a bit from what it used to be, which was, you go to different parts. Like Boston's very old compared to New York, and you go to the Beacon Hill, and you have history there. You go to the North End, there's history. You can't disrupt that. So we have a lot more.
They don't have to build up yet, John. They have like 685,000 people. That's like cute. You see?
Yes, you say that, but if you look at the population of, Greater Boston area, though, Greater Boston area is one of the fastest growing. When I say Greater Boston, I'm talking from like, little over the border in New Hampshire, all the way down, to the South Shore of Boston.
I was actually surprised though that you were your 24th largest city in the country. I thought it was much larger than that. I mean, I was actually stunned. I was like, wow, it's that small. Can you tell me a little bit about the housing stock that you have? Like here in New York, a lot of people don't know, but 70% of our housing stock is rental property, which is astonishing. And of that last 30%, the 30% that's left, we have about 66% of co-ops, which you probably have like no measurable number of. And so I'm just curious, like what sort of condos do you have? Are they townhouses? Like here, townhouses vary in size. They're huge. I think a lot of them, they're like the Federalist type, like federal houses, like in Baltimore and in some are in Tribeca. They're smaller.
Yes. So that's a great question, right? Like it was never a full service kind of, vertical city for a long time, but downtown, we've really come full circle. So we have, like I showed you, the Echelon building here in the Seaport is like 300 plus units condos. If you're in Beacon Hill, you're going to be in brownstones and small little, single families or small 3-4 unit, buildings. Same with the Back Bay, but we have Raffles with a condo component now. The first Raffles in the United States opening up in the Back Bay. You have Millennium Towers. Millennium Partners is opening another probably 150 plus condos. We have, that's actually called Winthrop Center. Then we have St. Regis, another brand. Four Seasons, One Dalton, it's another. So we're becoming a little bit more like New York with that, but a lot of the key areas, the North End, the South End, those are, brownstones. Those have that, like, Charlestown, you can get single families up to, $15, $20 million over there. Depending on where you are.
For how big? How big?
So if you're getting a big single family like Lewisburg Square, where John Kerry lives, I think one of those sold for like 14, 15 million. It was probably 8 to 10,000 square feet. But big. I know one of the largest condo just sold in Boston. It was all off market, and they signed like NDAs. But I heard it was like 45 or 42 million at the Millennium Building in Boston, the top floor, which is about.
But what about like a standard, normal size townhouse that someone's,
in Back Bay? What's the range?
Is it 3,000 square feet?
Oh, so yeah, those are probably, I would say you're roughly anywhere between 1,800, 2,000 square feet, up to 7,500 square feet.
And those that are like 3,000 ish square feet sell for what?
Those are about $1,500 a square foot, roughly. So price per square foot over there, Back Bay and Beacon Hill and South End, which are probably the most desirable. And you're lucky to get any outdoor space with that as well.
And maybe Lisa knows, what proportion of your marketplace is rentals?
Maybe
Lisa, do you know that?
About 30 to 40%. A lot of the newer buildings that are being built are rental properties. We have a big influx of students. We need to house them. We have an influx of corporations. So a lot of these developers at one time were going to go condo, then they reverted back to rentals. Now some of them are reverting back to condos. So it's really at the time of year when the developer really feels what the market is really asking for this inventory. But the rentals are expensive. They're just, if not more expensive than New York. And people can afford them, and they're here the executives are here, or inventory is limited, and they can afford to live in a rental for a little bit, figure out what neighborhood, just like New York, San Francisco, they want to see what neighborhood they want to be in, what amenities they need, and then they make their decision. So it's very healthy and lucrative to our agents for consistent cash flow, which is nice when there is no inventory.
There's an interesting dynamic happening here in that with all the things that have happened with the inflation, with the interest rates doubling, essentially, is that sale prices should be moderating more than they are, but rental prices are so high. It's actually supporting, putting a kind of a floor into the sale market.
Yeah, and a lot of our clients, like New York, from Westchester or New Jersey, they downsize their homes in the suburbs, and they're not ready to go to their second home full time in the Cape or Nantucket in the Vineyard. So they're coming back to the city, but they have families, they have kids, they have grandkids. So they need the space. They need at least minimum 2 bedrooms. So that's what we're really seeing that, and developers are learning to build that product as well.
You know, one of the things, you know, we don't count population wise. We forget that because we have so many colleges here, the amount of people that actually move to Boston at the end of August, I mean, the city's booming right now. You can't get a hotel room in the city at a decent place right now for under $600, $700. I mean, we're becoming, you know, we're not New York City. No one will ever be New York City, but we also smell way nicer than New York City. And that's
might be the smartest city.
We could be one of the smartest. Yeah. But the city's jamming and it's booming right now. And it's just like energy here, which was never, Boston was never a city full of energy like New York. You know, you get that energy, that whip, and you have it. Boston's finally getting to that place now, which is nice to see.
All right, I want Allison, you got to unmute yourself, and same thing with Johnny. I do want to hear about, oh, there you are, Johnny. Johnny.
Hello.
I love your new listing, but I love that you are there with the top down, with the sunglasses. You look like you're listing. I love that.
I'm actually driving to a broker open. I'm pretty late, so.
I'm going to share the screen while you're on the screen. Everybody can now see the grotto. They can see the tennis court. They can see the bowling alley. They see the arcade. They see the 20-car garage at your $23 million listing in Leverett, Mass.
Yep.
All those amenities. Does it matter? Are people buying amenities now?
Well, it's funny. I had 2 calls today. One was from a boutique hotel developer, and the other was from a country club. So
I was curious who your buyer was going to be. I was like, it's got to be like almost an institution.
Yeah, I mean, it could be a college around there, could be a hotel, could be a country club, could be I've had also calls from 2 very wealthy people overseas, but it's a process. These things don't happen overnight. So we're screening everyone and seeing who's going to come visit, and hopefully we can get it sold soon. It's not even on the market yet. So that's the amount of press it got because of DE is great. So that's amazing.
Don't give up hope. I just put on the second most expensive property in New Canaan, and after 6 weeks of really nothing happening, and I was starting to get discouraged. My seller's starting to get discouraged. They've already made the move to Palm Beach, right? They're done. They don't want to maintain a second house. Boom. 2 bidders show up, bid it back up, $900,000, compete, and sign the contracts in the same day. So
that's amazing.
It can happen. It can happen.
Yeah,
so
I know.
My underbidder heads on up to Leverett, Massachusetts, and checks out your killer listing. I will tell you, sorry, Carl, but one of the bidders just sold his house in Nantucket for $8.5 million. You probably know who that is because there might only be one of those. Maybe there's a lot of those, but he just sold it for 8.5, or went under contract for 8.5. And he's like, what am I going to do with my Nantucket money? Boom. You look at Connecticut. Why did my Connecticut seller want to sell? Got a good deal 18 months ago in Palm Beach and thought, you know what? I'm going to make Palm Beach. I can do this full time. So it's interesting that the same group is moving from Hamptons, Nantucket, Connecticut, Palm Beach, and they all have an apartment in the city, right, Roberto?
Yeah, but I think it's funny you saying he got a good deal in Palm Beach. That's not something you hear.
He did. I think he bought for 6 and somebody's offered him 10 already. And he said, wow, all right. So yeah, I mean, Palm Beach, let's just talk about Palm Beach because they're not here, right? So let's talk about them. Palm Beach is on everybody's radar as one of those places that might be overheated, and, you know, Florida generally overheated. I don't hear that about New York, and I don't hear that about Connecticut, and I don't hear that about Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, and Boston. do any of you hear that these prices cannot be sustained by the job market, by the income levels? Is the Northeast are any of these markets overheated? And Nantucket might be, you know, with these crazy prices and the Hamptons, crazy prices, accused of being overheated. But those are two very small and very special markets.
Yeah, we're generally accused of it at times, but Nantucket has an entity called the Land Bank, and 2% of purchase price paid for by the buyer goes into a general fund, and Land Bank buys up property for either public or general or conservation purposes. So the island is now over 51% in conservation. So with that kind of supply already dried up from an already small island, it really helps insulate our market.
Allison, tell me about Martha's Vineyard. Are you in the same sentence with Nantucket? Is it behaving the same way?
I think that the Vineyard is similar in a lot of ways to Nantucket and mimics the similar market. I think that Nantucket is a little bit more protected with just a hyper uber wealthy, much like Palm Beach. I think that, you know, the price, the entry point, Nantucket being well over $1 million, $2 million entry point or so, you can still get a couple little, you know, like dogs under $1 million here on the Vineyard. So, you know, the price per square foot, obviously Carl said you can't really compare quite like the city, but I do like to take a look at where we're at with price per square foot, just to kind of keep an eye on, you know, where it's trending year over year, especially with regard to new development. So, you know, if you're looking at the Cape, it's more about like $450 a square foot. Martha's Vineyard is about like $950 a square foot on average. And then when you're getting into Nantucket, it's about $1350 a square foot on average, entry level, just to get into the market. So that's kind of what you're looking at in each one of those areas. Obviously, there's anomalies with tiny cottages, waterfront, water view. Those are, you know, going to drive the price up naturally. But
you have a command for the numbers.
I tend to look at the numbers because I want to empower my buyers to, you know, over time, losing deals without being as on top of, you know, the numbers. I think that that's taught me that in order to win, you really need to educate your buyer to be in line with the market, because you don't want to be too far out of the market, because the sellers are knowledgeable about what their homes are worth. And I always educate my buyers that, you know, these prices are really going to yield you a success in the purchase and offer.
All right, pause. I want to show everybody on the screen, and then I'm going to ask you a question. See this guy? Buy now, sell later. And that's Roberto, and it's a really brilliant market report. And he gives the advice in 3 minutes and 34 seconds that basically you should be buying now, and if you're a seller, be looking at the spring. And I want to know whether that's going to be true in Martha's Vineyard, but also tell me in Boston and Nantucket. Roberto, why don't you tell us what is your thesis statement there? Why should I be buying now and selling in the spring?
Well, I think that obviously so much has happened since the beginning of the year. I mean, interest rates have doubled. We had the war. People, you know, we always have a summer lull. I mean, most probably markets do, but here there's a lull. This year, it was magnified by the fact that people were just so exhausted by all the information that was coming through that it literally, I mean, the market really slowed. So now it's a time period, and now we have the, you know, midterm elections that are going to come, and et cetera, which never amount to anything in reality, but it's a matter of sentiment. People slow down. So right now is a tremendous opportunity for people to get out there and buy. Also, all the deals that were in New York, the length of the deal is at least 3 months on average. So all the closing numbers that we had from the slowdown starting May, June, July are slowly going to start to trickle in. And that's it's going to be a reality for sellers that they can't deny, because the numbers will have come in. They're all still trying to price from an aspirational place that we were, like Carl was saying. And I think it's the best opportunity. Also, I think that by the time spring comes around, people, I've always made the analogy. It's like there's been a gigantic snowstorm outside, 2 feet, and everybody's just standing there going, holy crap, it snowed 2 feet. After a while, you're like, I got to go to work. I got to go to the store. I got to take my kids to school. Life moves on. People, they get divorced. People get married. People have children. Children leave the house. Life moves on. By spring, people will be accustomed to what is happening. It will be a reality, and they have to move on with their life. And I believe that the market is going to be overwhelmingly busy in spring, and that's going to be really good for sellers. That's my
Allison,
thesis.
is he right? Or is it now the time to jump on my vineyard property, my vineyard beach house? Because in the spring, all of the spring optimism will be back.
Well, thinking about these markets, they're very much seasonal markets. So it's not quite like a Manhattan market or Boston market. Yeah, there's drivers like college, et cetera, for Boston, but being that it's a seasonal market, people are they're active, engaging, and they're on the island socializing and enjoying in the summer. Maybe they're, sealing a deal or closing up a deal in the fall. If you're a fall buyer, you have the winter to either renovate, which does take a number of months, usually on the Vineyard or Nantucket, to get things done. If you're a fall buyer, you have the opportunity to make those renovations or put it up for rent and get those people secured for next summer for a rental purpose. But you're also going to have to carry it over the winter. You're going to have the carrying costs of having a property manager, or maybe if you took a loan in these markets, maybe you do, maybe you don't. You're going to carry it over the winter. If you're looking in the spring, I think that a lot of the sellers do position themselves as a spring list because they know that people are looking to get into the home. Maybe if you get something, I have a lot of buyers that are looking to get in, but they don't know if they want to carry it for the winter. Maybe they're thinking like February, March, if they're getting into a deal, April, May closing, then they're ready to occupy or rent for the summer season and capitalizing on that. So I think a lot of the sellers do know that people are looking to occupy for the summer, coming in on this in spring, but also, again, like you said, there are a number more buyers looking in the spring.
Craig,
I want to pop on and say something because, Roberto, you're absolutely right. When the market kind of paused back in May, June, July, when it really slowed down, and it came out of nowhere. And I think the interest rates really, the mortgage rates were up and everybody was kind of caught off guard. But the comps you were pulling were from 2, 3, 4, 5, 6 months ago when the market was incredibly high. What I'm seeing now is a lot of homes that try to get on the market and try to time the hotness of the market kind of missed out, and it's kind of correcting itself. And you start to see people that'll be on the market for 4, 5, 6, 7 months at the end of the year. People may get desperate. This may be a great time to buy and get a discount off of some of these houses right now because some are starting to stay on the market, and that started back in June. So we really haven't had people were away up here, just like I'm sure in Connecticut and New York. So now people are coming back. I do think it's a great time to buy right now. I think you have leverage as a buyer for sure.
I have a theory about Roberto's golden handcuffs. He says a lot of people are tied into their 3% and 2% mortgages, and they are reluctant to sell. And I asked a bunch of my peers this morning, and they said, yeah, I really don't want to sell. I don't want to sell my house with my 3% mortgage, downsize into something with an 8% mortgage pretty soon. I'll be making the same payment. So a lot of them are like, well, what am I going to do? I'm moving on. I'm moving to Florida or wherever my job takes me. A lot of them are holding on to their house, which is part of why we have low inventory. And I think that they're going to test, many of them are going to test the rental market. I think my sister, when she gets down to Florida, is going to rent, not buy, because of those prices and the lack of inventory. And I think she might rent her Connecticut house. And a lot of these people have said to me, I think I might try and rent for a couple of years because the rental prices are so out of control right now. And there's no rentals to be had. Are you seeing this in Boston and in Nantucket and the Vineyard? I mean, are we seeing basically a tendency for people to stick with those mortgages, low mortgages, and go into the rental market instead, hold the property?
I haven't seen that per se. I get where you're coming from, and it does make sense. But I do think one thing that really amazed me, and I'm sure it's amazed a lot of the agents on here, is the amount of cash buyers at all price points that that I've seen over the last, 12 to 18 months. And I cannot believe how many buyers are cash out there. And again, if you're buying cash, and even if you're spending 700, 800,000, that's where you have even more leverage as a buyer. But sure, I mean, yeah, if the rates and the Fed's supposed to take another rate hike, I think in the coming days or so. So I would expect that, that might be a good opportunity. The rental market here is insane. And I think that's part of the problem. But I do think over time, I do think Boston's always going to be one of the safest places to park, to put money, to invest. There's always a strong rental market here. And again, geographically, we're so small. So, there's not that much space. But interest rates are affecting things way more out in the burbs, 25, 35 miles outside of Boston, for sure. A lot of people are going to be on hold out there, for sure.
Carl?
Yeah, I mean, Nantucket has historically followed the S&P 500 really close. If you look at the Nantucket real estate market and you look at the S&P 500, our lines are almost identical. We also have a very low carrying cost in terms of taxes. Right now, we're a little over 3,500 per million of assessed. So, to buy a $5 million piece of land and pay 18 grand in taxes a year feels pretty good for someone of that caliber. So a lot of our hedge fund guys have been buying up property on Nantucket because they know they can just sit on it for a while.
How about the foreign market? It occurs to me that if they're watching a strong dollar get stronger, and you just told me that Nantucket's a blue chip stock, not yet paying a dividend, but give it time, then are you seeing foreigners park their money in Nantucket and the Vineyard?
Not as much as one would think. We do get, UK buyers, Switzerland buyers. But I would say that really is about it. I don't really see other nationalities from abroad coming over.
How about you, Roberto? Are they back in New York?
No,
Boston,
I mean, there are people that are interested, but it's definitely, they're looking at it through a different lens because the exchange is completely changed, and that's a barrier. I'm curious about. Do you guys first? I'm curious what your tax structure is like for property in on a purchase. How much you pay in taxes? What do you pay annually? And also, just curious about. Do you guys see any policy challenges coming? We had a tremendous amount of stuff happen to us between 2015 and 2019. From the rental laws to all kinds of different things, it's really affected our market in an adverse way. Do you guys have that? Is your new mayor, Michelle Wu, is she a friend of real estate or not?
Yes and no. She's a friend of real estate and development, but not big development, not new dev. Our taxes with the traditional condos are about $10 and I think 38 cents per square foot. So our taxes are very high. So someone purchasing a 2,000 square foot condo, you're paying at least $20,000 a year in taxes. So we are tax heavy in Boston. Suburbs are a little bit, less stringent on certain areas, but the Cape is inexpensive. Vineyard's expensive, Nantucket, because it's controlled. Where Nantucket or Boston rather, I think at times they really, get a bang for their buck. And I hate to say it this way, but with these new developments. With the Raffles, with the St. Regis, we have a development called the Parker, and it's very reasonably priced, but it'll be expensive for taxes. But it's a stepping stone for people to come into the market with new development. The Circus team is representing it. It's brand new from Fortis in New York, so the aesthetic, the finishes are unbelievable. So someone coming in isn't going to mind to pay that, or the condo fee on top of that. It's really about $1 to $2 a square foot. Just on monthly condo fees. But again, we are a strong market, whether it's foreign or domestic, local, and people are willing to pay it because it is a safe value and a safe investment in Boston. It has been for a long time. So we're very fortunate for that.
Have you had a lot of people, let me ask you this. This is what I wanted to know actually. So in New York, we're kind of back to 2019 pricing. We dropped tremendously. We probably dropped an average of 8 to 10%. That all evaporated and we got back to normal around 2021. But then since then it's softened a bit, but we're we're more or less 2019 pricing. Are you guys in that sphere or not?
Yes, yes, but also, during COVID, a lot of developers would take these townhouses and renovate them. So before COVID, or where they'd be 1,200 square foot, now at the renovation, they're 17 to 2,000 a square foot. So what we took during the pandemic was really turn around our inventory. So we do see a higher price per square foot now, for sure. But there are some places that people have lived forever and want to go to Florida, and they're willing to unload it because they own it. So it's just really extra money, maybe because the taxes are so high. Generationally, their kids can't afford to be in the city or afford a renovation and the taxes, so they decide to sell it and then gift the money to their children. And we see a lot of that, especially with the single family phenomenon on Beacon Hill. With Elaine, who's on the call right now, she's working with a great client right now, two of them in the market for single families. And these aren't small single families. These are 7,000 square foot single families. And they want the privacy that single family offers. They want no control of their building. So it's interesting to see it coming back. And it's at Beacon Hill, Back Bay, nonstop construction workers, nonstop renovations. So it's exciting to see that people understand the value and can really afford to pay the value to renovate these beautiful homes.
So I had to refer to my map, Beacon Hill, Bay, Back Bay.
Yep, I'm going to open up the map right now. So it sounds like Beacon Hill right there and Back Bay right there are the most coveted neighborhoods in Boston. Is that right?
Yes.
And the seaport.
And South End. So if you go to South End, that is where South End is driving transaction absorption for Boston and have all year, because this is the area where developers are taking these single families and converting them into condos or renovating the condos, these old, beautiful row houses. So that South End has the inventory. So that's why the transaction and the absorption is up. Craig is
and
correct.
where's Southie?
That's a
Notorious
right
Southie.
Right there. And South Boston's, again, they're the third highest in transactions.
On the other side of the tracks, quote unquote, like on the other side of the highway.
It's actually right next. It's actually right next to the seaport now. Yeah. So it's not so cheap. It's Southie's not Southie with Whitey Bulger anymore. No, Southie's nice.
For the people who live in South Boston, again, you have the developers there making new inventory, desirable inventory. That person perhaps right now can't afford the seaport. So they're living in Southie and then moving eventually to the seaport. But it's beautiful, big store, just really cool. It's like Hoboken.
So it's changed from what one would perceive it as what you would read like in the 80s, et cetera.
Yeah, 100%. And the seaport in the 80s and the 90s was all parking lots. Now it's this metropolis. And Craig was right earlier. It's desirable. It's on the water. It's new.
They're destinations now.
Yeah, it's a destination if you want to be in the seaport.
So what's up and coming and affordable? Fenway? Can I still get a deal in Fenway?
Yeah, but Fenway's developed.
Not really.
There's one piece of dirt left. That's it. There's no dirt in Boston. Their developers are building above the expressway, and developers are building. There's one parcel on the waterfront, which actually Element has the exclusive to. So we'll be building a development there. Two of them actually. One over garage and then another parcel. So luckily for DE, we have these two developments, but it's the only dirt left in the city. It's amazing.
Will anybody visit that height restriction?
Yes. Well, so Millennium Tower right now is the tallest building. So that's like, I think 632 feet. Don't quote me on that. Then one Dalton. So we do get height, but down in the waterfront, you can't. Seaport, you cannot because of the airport too. You're right with Logan, so you can't have a.
And where is Logan?
If you're at the seaport, it's direct. You can if you had a good arm like Tom Brady, you could hit it.
Yeah, you can see it right there. So one of the best things about Boston comparatively to New York is that it takes about 7 to 10 minutes to get from the airport to downtown Boston.
And it's an international air, and it's international.
With traffic.
Yeah, and it's international, and you can take a water taxi there. It's unbelievable.
That's a big difference from here.
Yeah, absolutely.
But all positive.
So where can I get a deal? Fenway's already gone. So what's
No,
the
you're
next
gonna
deal?
you gotta go. You gotta, in my opinion, and it's not even a deal anymore in the city. You got to go to East Boston, which is kind of going through a whole big change in itself. Otherwise, really, right now, what I think is the hottest area is right near the casino, and that's Everett area, and they're cleaning it up. One of the largest developers, the Davis companies here that built the Omni Hotel, they're building it. They just won the bid from the city of Everett to redo where like all these gas tanks that Exxon Mobil
I
cleaned it
can't
up.
even find it. Where is it?
Go back, go,
So-
zoom out, John. It's next to East, keep zooming out where East Boston is, Chelsea. Keep zooming out. It's around that vicinity over here.
Yeah,
Everett.
so
Yeah,
we
Everett,
have that's
Everett.
where the Encore casino is, and we have a full Las Vegas style casino here in Boston, which is about a 7-minute Uber ride from downtown, with restaurants and it looks like you're in Vegas at the Wynn Hotel or the Encore.
Is the perception of that though, like, geez, you live in Everett, that's like being in Queens, or something like that? Is it?
No, I mean, yes, it was like that. But now it's kind of changing because people want to be there. But yeah, I mean, it was sort of like that before, but so was Somerville, which was another area where my family's like alcohol production company was for many years. They used to call it Slummerville. And now you're talking, you can't get into new construction there. 3-bed, 2-bath townhouses, like 1-2, 1-3 now.
What about Cambridge? That's
Cambridge is
hot. It's hot. Then there's in like Kendall Square, there's just no inventory. It's insane. And then this Chelsea, East Boston, the views from East Boston to the city are unbelievable. So they have huge developments over there now.
Before the seaport got developed, what would be the top 2 or 3 most expensive clusters of places to live?
Back Bay and then downtown due to the Millennium Tower and at one time the Ritz when they developed their towers. But Back Bay's always been consistent with higher priced. And One Dalton Four Seasons just exploded it. But we have the Mandarin there with residents, another Four Seasons with residents, the Heritage, La Jardin. So these really beautiful, the Ritz Hotel was residents next door, the Clarendon House. So Back Bay has always been consistently high value. But the Seaport's mega numbers now. Raffles, I mean, it's amazing what the price they're going to get for Raffles. It's unbelievable.
Somerville, huh? That's the last deal. So when you tell your kids where they're going to be able to get their, I don't know, an entry level home.
No, not anymore in Somerville. I say Everett, right? Everett now.
You have to go to Leverett, where Johnny's house is. That's where you get
or Chelsea, Massachusetts. I think Chelsea is another area that has an opportunity to really be cool. You're talking within 2.5-3 miles of downtown Boston. It certainly has a ton of opportunity over there. HYM Developers is doing so our old Suffolk Downs, we had a big racetrack up there, is going through, they got rid of the horse racing and dog racing they had, and now it's going through a major development by HYM, and they're doing it's going to be a whole new city over there. It's like this whole dog park up it's up near Revere.
Zoom over to the left. Yeah, there you go, Revere Beach. See Suffolk Downs where all that greenery is?
Yes, that's a whole new development now.
Yep.
Can we talk about lifestyle for a second? Like in New York, it's starting to be, especially with COVID, there was always this sense of like, you live in New York and everybody loves it, but you need to get out. So you try to find a place, whether it's in the Hamptons or up in the Hudson Valley or wherever it is, just a different place to just kind of go and check out. Now there, it seems, and also like for the beach, you would go, I guess, to the Jersey Shore, you would go to the Hamptons or whatever. What's the beach destination there? Is it primarily the Cape, or is it that I saw there was a Revere Beach there? Is like, what do people do and where do they go? And now, just because of COVID, just one more point is that because people spent so much time and their second homes really became almost primary homes. In New York, there's almost this sense of, also because of hybrid working, is that you have a like co-primary residence. You kind of live in both places. Of course, for taxes you choose, but you're spending time, so much time in two different places. Is there any of that type of feel or in Boston?
Definitely the go-to destination is the Cape, but also the North Shore. So where Gloucester, way up, that's another great place. But yes, you see that. And someone can take a day trip up there. You don't have to spend the night at these places, but they do have beautiful inns, beautiful hotels. So that's like a quick little getaway. And then we always go to Newport, Rhode Island. So Boston really has, the lifestyle in Boston is very active. Beautiful, the Charles River, everyone's running around, you go to the colleges and go on the tracks. All these buildings, even rental buildings, have beautiful gyms. But when you really kind of want to get away for a little bit, you do go to the Cape, you go to the North Shore, or you go to Newport. So and they're all drivable distance. And if you really want to be adventurous, you would go to the Berkshires, Lenox, where Johnny's listing is, way up north. And that's a 2 to 3 hour production, but you're on a whole different planet when you go there. So yeah. Boston's super excited. It's like Connecticut, where you can jet over to New York, or you can go to Block Island, or you can go to Mystic. So it's kind of the same vibe that we get when you're in Connecticut, and how easy it is to get a quick little getaway and feel like you're not where you live.
Yeah, and don't forget Maine. Go up to Kennebunkport, Maine. Yep. Yeah, Maine is awesome.
Maine, Vermont, New Hampshire. Totally forgot about those states.
How far do you have to drive to get to Maine? How long does that take?
Oh, you're in Maine in an hour. I mean, you're in Portland an hour and 15 minutes in Portland, Maine. So southern Maine, so you have Algonquin. It's beautiful up there, so it's a nice getaway. It's certainly, it's a lot different than Massachusetts, but again, really great place to go. Portsmouth, New Hampshire, another great city. Providence, Rhode Island, we head to. Providence, Rhode Island's a really cool city. And they have, so there's just a lot happening. And then obviously Nantucket, Martha's Vineyard, Block Island, the Cape. I mean, there's just a lot to do. And we're starting to see a lot of people, have realized that, the Cape and the islands are great to come in the summer. And they're coming from all over the world now. So it's nice to see.
Like Connecticut, did your guys' suburbs explode like they did for John during COVID?
They did.
Oh, yeah.
We went from before COVID, everybody was trying to keep to a 1 hour commute, maybe an hour and 15. But after COVID, when no longer did anybody spend 5 days, a week in the office, we started to see it expand to a 2 hour radius, of Manhattan. So even you worked from Southampton because you didn't have to go into the office, every day. Well, that's 2 hours from Manhattan. Same thing. We started to see people upstate, Litchfield County, up in up the Hudson River Valley. The Hudson River Valley exploded. So we started to see a 2 hour radius. Would you say the same thing is true in Boston? That all of a sudden a sub 1 hour commute, it became acceptable to go to a 90-minute or even more commute?
I don't think so for Boston. I mean, 2 hours is, you're almost in New York. If you can get anywhere in Massachusetts within 2 hours. Yeah. So I think for us, it was really an hour, but we like to go by the belt. So like within 95 or within Interstate 495, what was happening is people were going out almost towards Worcester County, and Worcester County. And I think that's where a lot of these towns like Hudson, Clinton, these smaller ass towns kind of blew up a little bit. So people went out there because that was the only amount that they could afford, for what they wanted. They were getting priced out of everything else. But that's within about, I would say 45 to 60 miles of Boston. And then after that, it really, in my opinion, I think, it's just a different universe over there. And I don't think people were willing to go out to Western Mass, to Springfield.
Great.
If they had to work, we get Boston, too many realtors on the call, everybody gets excited and the market is going nowhere but up. So I got to turn to Jen here, my mortgage professional. And I have to say, am I crazy when I say that we could see 8% interest rates? I said a minute ago, and I had to ask Jen, is that out of whack? Jerome Powell said this week he is going to be aggressively fighting inflation, and the mortgage people I've talked to said 6 to 8% before the end of the year. What do you think?
I can be wrong, and sometimes I'm always wrong. but I take mortgage rate really is one step at a time. I don't get greedy. And I tell my client, if you like the rate you see now, if you found a house, which is a much more challenging effort to locate than getting a mortgage. So if you find the house you want, you win the deal, you go for it.
We buy houses, not mortgage rates. Okay.
Well, yeah, mortgage rate, you can refinance. You're not married to it. The house is where you live, where you build a life. That is a much longer commitment. Mortgage rate is going to go up. It may coming down again in a few years. Refinance. How many times have you guys all refinanced over the years? Right? Right now, we still have, and the reason I say there's a big drive, really depending on the program, agency loans, Fannie Mae, Freddie Mac, they are actually much, much higher. If you guys have been in business for a long time, people used to say, well, how much do I have to put down to get those interest rates? Well, it's really reversed. Jumbo rates are so much better than agency loans. And we're looking at in the fours still for jumbo loans versus, agency loans, probably depending on what you're buying, 6% or greater than 6%. So it really varies tremendously.
I want to show you the demand over the last several months on mortgages. Demand going way down. That worries me. That's where this is coming from. I'm also looking at the inflation chart. I don't know if you can see that, but that's the energy, food, goods, and services. And Jerome Powell is focused particularly on inflation in the service sector right now. And so therefore, I think we have to say it's a very good possibility that we're going to start to see interest rates above 6 and maybe as high as 8. It's going to affect all of our markets.
I think going back to what we said earlier, the high-end market is going to be really insulated because one, they're getting the advantage of the jumbo market is not subject to agency loan guidelines and pricing. And two, they are just more resilient. People that are pulling back now in the agency market at the conforming loan level because they can't afford it. And when the rate goes up 0.5%, all of a sudden they don't qualify for the originally targeted price anymore. So they have to regroup and maybe wait. All depending where you are.
You're seeing that, Roberto, Allison? You're starting to see people show up with plenty of cash. They've got lots of cash, and they
love it because it takes a lot of people out of the marketplace, and cash is king.
But we're seeing people going with cash and then going for mortgages at the last minute.
That was happening. We saw a lot of that just when the mortgage rates were really low because they were just like, I'll pay 2.5% because I'm going to make 10% on my money, so.
Exactly. So we're seeing a lot of that.
Yeah, in the island markets, I would say that we are, like what Jen said, very well protected, being that the average price is $2, $3, $4 million, you're seeing more cash at that price point naturally. And when I'm talking to my buyers, some of them are like, well, are the prices going to come down? Well, they might come down, but what we do see in these markets, and specifically the Nantucket and Martha's Vineyard market, is that, it's an emotional secondary home market. So it doesn't behave quite like the primary market does, where primary market, you're driven by need. Secondary market, you're driven by wants and needs, wants and emotions, and maybe a family lineage or generational property or just good times and summer fun. So, when I'm talking to people, they're saying, if they're more money focused, maybe they're thinking, well, if I hold off and I can get in 6, 9, 12, 18 months, well, I'm saying to them, generally what we'll see over time is a very slow, reconvenience to what maybe pricing appreciation had happened because people are very emotional to these properties and they're holding on. And then what I also will say to them is that, if you're thinking about your investment portfolio as a whole, if you're putting your money in the bank or if you're putting your money in the stock market, you're not returning in the bank, it's volatile in the stock market. If you're putting your money into Martha's Vineyard or Nantucket, specifically real estate, it's a limited resource. It's generally always appreciating over the long term. So it's a very strong, slow return on your money, but very, very strong over time. We're seeing, comparatively 2020 to 2018 or 2016 listings, a doubling in pricing. So where else can you make a double on your money over the course of 7 to 10, 15 years, which is, kind of an average hold for the secondary home market?
I think you're right. I think I think the best line right there was want versus need. And this, and a lot of these are want. And we have a different psychology around want versus need. I think this was great. How would you each like to conclude? What have we learned in the last hour about the Boston market? Who wants to go first? What?
Send your kids here for school. They'll never leave, and you can come visit.
I think I learned that it's not overheated. I think that I learned about a diversity of properties. I mean, ranging from Nantucket and the Vineyard and the Cape to each of the interesting markets around Boston. Some of them, like South End and Back Bay, have been very strong for a long time. But you guys are building as fast as you can, and some of these exciting neighborhoods like Everett are coming up. And I also heard, what's driving that, the life sciences industry in particular. While New York is driven a great deal by finance, and when Florida introduces, a great tax advantage, that affects New York profoundly. And I did not hear that happening with Boston's, which was interesting to me. What I didn't hear was as interesting as what I did. Roberta, what did you learn?
I think that Boston is on a really good track of expanding its overall appeal to a lot of people from all over the country and different parts of the world. So I think it's a great thing. I as a New Yorker, I said this in my promo, I get so sick of people saying, it's a great place to visit, but I never want to live there. And at the same time, I'm like, don't live here, go, So I think Boston has a little bit more appeal for me.
And if the Red Sox could just figure out starting pitching, I think, maybe Boston will have a terrific 2023, but, there you have it. All right. Thank you, Lisa. Thank you, Allison.
Thanks, everyone.
Say thank you to Johnny. Very stylish Johnny in his convertible. I love the image of Johnny in his convertible selling $23 million houses. I wish that's how every millennial should be selling houses. Absolutely. Right, Roberto? I think
absolutely.
We missed out. I love that. Goodbye, everybody.
Thank you.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Roberto. Thank you.
I'll see you soon.
Thank you.
Thank you.